Hey guys, Chris here with the Good Old Gamer. So today we're going to take a different look at the whole gaming landscape. Usually we focus on tech and new video cards, CPUs, and performance, and all of these things are relevant and important to us as enthusiast gamers. But there's one aspect that most people seem to be overlooking, and this is the fact that there's really no games out there that are worth investing large sums of money in the latest and greatest tech. And I think this is the reason why a lot of people are becoming disenfranchised with the whole, hey, we need to go out and buy new stuff moniker that, the marketing teams from NVIDIA, Intel, and AMD are really pushing on us. For example, the announcement of the new Radeon 7 really fell on deaf ears when it comes to me. A $700 GPU is not warranted in today's landscape, as there's nothing out there that's good enough for me to spend $700 to play it. Now, this is just my opinion, but I feel most people out there are starting to come to the same realization. Games just haven't been that good in a very long time. Now, I know a couple of you guys are probably hitting the keyboard already. Please let me finish this analysis here and then give me your opinion, because I know a few of you are going to be talking about things like God of War and Spider-Man and games like that, and I will bring that up here in a little bit. One of the biggest issues I think is really facing the major AAA multi-platform developers is the fact that most of us have a huge backlog of games. Now, for example, this is my Steam account right here. I'm just going to scroll through slowly, and a large portion of these games I have never even played. So a lot of you might be thinking, well, they already got your money, so what do they care? Well, the thing is, a lot of these games are really, really good, and instead of investing in their new products, which are probably inferior to these, I will simply just go back and play these games. This is what I did on my little hiatus when I took a couple months off. I went back and I played some of the best games of all time, such as Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, the original God of War on PS2. These are games that are fantastic and still hold up well today. Recently, I've gotten back into Mario Kart 8. This is a game that's been out for a while, and I'm really, really enjoying that. Now, those are console games, but even on PC, games such as Serious Sam, I can go back and play that at any time and have a great experience. Half-Life, Half-Life 2, Doom 3. We can go to Max Payne. I mean, there's a whole list of games right in front of you right now that I could play just about any of these and have a fantastic experience with, and many of them I haven't even touched. Vanquish, for example, is a game that I played a little bit on the Xbox 360, and I picked it up here on Steam when it came out on PC, but I haven't touched it since. And many of you probably have a similar list of games on Steam or even something like GOG, where I'm repicking up all of these games because I prefer to have them DRM free, and I still haven't gotten to a lot of them, even though that these are games that I really want to play. For example, Descent, I've played the original, but I haven't played 2 or 3, and I haven't gotten to these yet because I want to go back through and play Descent as well. And this is probably a very similar experience that most of you guys have. You may even have games for PlayStation or Xbox still in the plastic that you haven't touched. And there's really 2 reasons why this really has struck me. One, Jeremy from The Quartering actually did this video right here, and he basically just said what I just said, and it resonated with me because I'm in the exact same boat as him. There's no reason for me to invest in new games when I have a large swath of games at my disposal that I either haven't played in a really long time or have never played. So I might as well take advantage of the games that I already have and save a lot of money and not invest in new hardware, because my current hardware will run all of these just fine, and instead just play what I have. And the second is, in this video that I produced, I said this. But I'm talking about your EAs, your Activisions, your Ubisofts. Those guys, they seem to have no interest in trying to make the best game of all time. They're trying to make the most profitable games of all time. And honestly, that's the underlying truth. The major AAA publishers out there, they want to generate as much money as possible. They're no longer interested in developing the best game possible. So for example, I'm over here on my GOG list. So I'm just scrolling through real quick. Games like Legacy of Kain, Maniac Mansion, Metal Slug, Medal of Honor, Allied Assault, Metro 2033, Last Light, Monkey Island 2, Painkiller. I mean, these are all fantastic games, and I just scrolled down and just picked a few that were right in front of me. And these are some of the best games in their genre ever made. So I have all of these at my disposal at any time that I wish to play them. And instead, developers now think that I'm going to be interested in investing in their subpar games that are most of the time broken and don't work for a few months until after they get patched a couple of times. So they think that I'm more interested in that than playing games that I already have. And this isn't the case. Honestly, I'm having a lot more fun just going through and playing better games than we're getting here today. And as I already stated, this really has an effect when you look at new PC hardware because you have no need to invest in any of that. If you're more interested in playing good quality games instead of the newest, shiniest games, for example, something like Battlefield 5 with ray tracing, I know a lot of people bought that solely for the fact to use ray tracing on their brand new RTX cards. That's a monumental waste of money. Battlefield 5 from critics was not well received. Honestly, from everything I've seen, I'm not interested in it. It does nothing of interest for me to even want to play the game. Now, if you're enjoying the game, good for you, go for it. But realistically, I'd much rather play something like Battlefield 4, which to me was the last great Battlefield game. But that's just my opinion. But my point with that is, there's no reason for most of us to go ahead and worry about this new hardware and all this new shiny stuff because there's nothing worth using it on at this point in time. I mean, you could use just base hardware and run Fallout 3 at 4K if you wanted to. And that's the other side of the coin. I don't know about you guys, but I typically have a rotation of games. The best games, my favorite games of all time, I like to go back through and play them every couple of years or so. It's much like, my favorite movies. Every few years, I'd like to rewatch them. That's just the way that I am. I don't need something new all the time. Sometimes I would rather experience something great or something that I enjoyed and still enjoy instead of a new experience because I know I'm going to get a good experience out of that. For example, BioShock right here. This is a fantastic game. I can go through it again right now. It's been a couple of years and I will enjoy the hell out of it. I know I will have a good time with it. Of course, it won't be as good as the first time through, but that same could be said for, like I said, movies or anything else. However, there's really no other competition to a game like BioShock. Name one game that came out besides possibly Red Dead Redemption. Although I'm not a big open world guy, I prefer a linear experience. But besides Red Dead Redemption, over the holiday season, what else came out that you could say would even rival BioShock or even be on the same level as a BioShock type game? Nothing came out that is at this tier. Nothing that I can think of besides, like I said, maybe Red Dead Redemption 2. And that is one game, and that is a console exclusive. And as I said in that other video, AAA developers that are multi-platform are not trying to build the best games of all time. However, developers, first-party studios, are trying to build the best games of all time. Games like God of War, games like Spider-Man, and then you do have, studios like Rockstar and CD Projekt Red that they're going to shoot for that gold. But other than those guys, for the most part, your bigger publishers, they don't care. They're just out to make as much money as possible for as little investment as possible. And I think it's because they're starting to realize people are going to start spending less and less on games as their collections get bigger and bigger, and their rotation of great games that they want to revisit grows and grows and grows. And another major factor is the amount of time that gamers have to actually invest in gaming as they get older. A couple weeks ago, I asked you guys as a community, how many hours do you typically spend on playing games per week? 731 of you guys responded to this. Thank you for that, by the way. And 61% play games less than 10 hours per week. 10 hours or less. Okay, so that is the majority. And this makes sense. If you actually think about it, for most people, they only have maybe 2 or 3 hours of free time per day on a work day. And usually weekends, that's when you go out and you do things or repair the house or get your car fixed or something. That's when you do your major chores, is on the weekends or your days off. So typically you only have a couple hours per day, and this is spread across all of your hobbies and everything that you want to do in your free time. So spending more than maybe an hour or two per day on gaming just isn't in the time budget for most people out there. And this goes back to what I was saying about going through your rotation and your backlog. If you only have 10 hours per week, think of a game like Star Wars: The Knights of the Old Republic. This will take you 30, maybe 40 hours to get through if you really dive deep into it. I'm sure you could blow through it in 20, but let's say even 20 hours on the more conservative side. This game is going to take up 2 weeks of your time. And that's if you want to go through a game that came out in 2003 all over again. So this is 2 weeks of your time where you're not worried about any other games out there. You don't need any extravagant hardware to run this. You can play it on just about any PC with a decent graphics card. And if you have an Xbox One, it even runs on there. So it's very easy to run this game on many different platforms. And that's simply one example. I mean, the same could be said about many of these games, even shorter ones that only take maybe 6 to 8 hours. You're still talking about half or the majority of a week of your entire gaming. So that takes that out of the equation. Now, let's say you have 20 or 30 games or 50 or 100 that you like to go through in rotation. It's very hard for you to find time to fit in anything new. The only things that you will want to fit in is if they deliver an experience that you've never had before or a better experience than something that you're familiar with. For example, I'm showing you footage of Fight and Rage here. This is a new indie game, which I'll touch on indie games here in a sec, that just came out. And basically what it is it's just a side-scroller, fighting game. Something like Final Fight or the old Ninja Turtles arcade game or something like that. But they added new mechanics and made it a deeper game. And I've been enjoying this a lot because I used to like things like Streets of Rage and Final Fight and games like that. And this game takes it to that next level. And that's the reason why I'm enjoying this. This was a game that I picked up on GOG for $10. This was a $10 game. And realistically, I'm going to get probably 6 to 10 hours of enjoyment out of it. And I only had to spend $10 for that experience. That's the other crux of the problem. Indie developers have the ability to offer similar experiences at much lower prices. So there's no reason for me to go ahead and spend $60 on a game that EA makes, because I can go spend $10, get a similar amount of enjoyment out of that product at a much lower price. So I can wait maybe a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years until the game that EA produces to get dirt cheap, $1 or $2 on Origin, or, maybe pick it up at a GameStop or a Walmart bargain bin for just a few dollars. I could play that game then and see how it was. And if I don't like it, I don't care. I don't have to ever play it again. It only cost me $1 or $2. That's one of the big reasons why a lot of these games on Steam and on your backlog, you don't play because you didn't invest much money into it, so it doesn't matter. In reality, it's more valuable for you not to invest your time into playing a lot of these games that aren't very good. You might start it up and it just doesn't grab you and you move on because of how limited time is. Now, I don't want this to be coming off sounding so pessimistic. This is actually a good thing. The realization that you don't need to invest money anymore in hardware, you don't really need to invest money in games that much. This is actually very liberating because, well, this frees up a lot of funds. Of course, there are going to be games that you still want to play. For example, I am kind of interested in Anthem. I'm very hesitant on that, and I'm going to wait for a lot of reviews, and I'm going to wait a month or two after it releases to see if people are still interested in it, how the end game goes, and things like that, because that looks like a slightly different experience than anything that I've played before. So there are similar games out there, but I think that they might be able to do things better, kind of like how I said the indie games are able to do with a lot of older genres. So I'm kind of interested in that. Of course, I'm going to pick up Doom Eternal because I love Doom 2016, and this is just looks like the evolution of that. It's going to be similar but better. So I am interested in that. I'm also kind of interested in Rage because it looks kind of like Doom 2016 once again, but similar but different. However, a lot of the other games out there, like the new Far Cry that's coming out, I did play Far Cry 5. It was okay, but realistically, it doesn't look like it's any different, and I don't think it's going to be any better. So I'm just going to wait for that game to become dirt cheap, and then I'll pick it up, which is actually what I did with Far Cry 5. I waited until all of the holiday sales kicked in, and it was very, very inexpensive. And then at that point, it made sense for me to play it. And I did have a good time with it, but it wasn't anything different that I haven't played before. So realistically, that time could have been used doing other things, making videos or going ahead and playing better games. So that's kind of what I'm at, and that's where I'm at. I'm trying to figure out, why would I want to invest in all of these things when I don't need to, because I can get better experiences elsewhere? Realistically, I'd rather buy a Wii U right now. You just heard me. I'd rather get a Wii U because with that, I can play all the great games from GameCube all the way through the Wii U that I've never experienced and actually have a great time with those. Because I know, I had a GameCube and I had a lot of fun with, Smash Melee and Luigi's Mansion. And like I mentioned in a previous video, the Rogue Squadron games, which you can only play on GameCube. Through emulation, those don't really run very well. And I don't really want to go ahead and get HDMI mods for my GameCube. I'd much rather just get the Wii U because, well, it's already got HDMI out, and that works much better with modern TVs. And then, of course, there are newer games as well. Like I said, you got Mario Karts and Donkey Kong games that I've never played before, and I enjoyed those back on the SNES and N64, so I may enjoy those games as well, and they're dirt cheap right now. So realistically, to me, that's more interesting than a Radeon 7. That's more interesting than an RTX 2060, because those are not going to give me anything of any real value. You can run games at higher resolution. Whoopity-doo. That's not really that interesting to me because I can already run the games that I want to run at extremely high resolutions now with very moderate hardware. An RX 570 can run all of the games that I mentioned at 1080p easy, and the legacy games I was talking about, it could probably push those to 4K if you absolutely need that. So running new games at 1080p and the vast majority of older titles or indie titles that I'll be playing at, I could run those at any resolution I want, so that doesn't really matter. I don't need that new or super high-end hardware. Also, another interesting point that I forgot to mention is Steam put their most played games list of 2018 out, and the top category is actually really interesting. If you look at this, most of these games are free to play or cheap to play. The only two games on this list that I would classify as a traditional AAA game would be Monster Hunter World, which is selling at $60. This is the only one selling at, full price, and then GTA 5. Rainbow Six Siege technically is a AAA game, but it was always meant as a multiplayer only, something kind of like PUBG. So I don't really count that as a full AAA game per se. These are complete games with campaigns and everything else. So, but anyway, even if you count that, that's 3 games out of all of the top played games. And most of these aren't very demanding to play. And that's another big thing. Most people, besides Monster Hunter World, the rest of these will play on just about anything. We've seen Grand Theft Auto run on some serious potatoes out there, and Rainbow Six Siege is reasonably well optimized. PUBG, you can just crank it down so it looks like junk and it'll run on just about anything. But Warframe is not difficult to run. We know Fortnite's not hard to run. Team Fortress 2 is ancient. Dota 2, CSGO, you can get into the multiple hundreds of frames per second on those very easily. And I just find it really interesting that we don't see the games that you would think. You don't have your Assassin's Creed Odysseys. You don't have your big AAA titles in here. This isn't what people want to play. This isn't what they're investing their time in. And as you can see here, the most successful ones, for the most part, are free to play or extremely cheap to play. And then they make their money off of the microtransactions. So what this says to me is you either have to deliver a complete experience like Monster Hunter World or GTA 5, and then you can get away with microtransactions, or you have to go free to play. You can't charge $60 and then try to nickel and dime everybody with microtransactions, because that's just not what people want, and people aren't interested in that. So I wanted to throw this out there. So People would much rather play much older games, which most of these are pretty old right now. Like I said, besides Monster Hunter World, PUBG's even a couple years old. Team Fortress 2 is very old. Dota 2 is very old. Warframe's very old. CSGO's very old. I mean, they all are. These are all old games, and this is what people want to play. People aren't interested in the latest and greatest simply because it's new and shinier. Well, alrighty, guys, those are just my thoughts on the situation here. I mean, it's obviously very complex, and it comes down to everybody's subjective opinion. For me personally, like I said, when I was on hiatus, I became far more interested in APUs and the least amount of power it takes to run games. I'm really kind of interested in that. Cortex did a video speaking about how he believes that APUs will actually be the future for mainstream gamers. And due to my own interest in that, just naturally gravitating towards that direction, I think he might actually be right. I'm going to put a link to his video in the description below, so you can check that out for yourself. But honestly, if they could come out with a decent APU that could run all of my current games, and like I said, the ones that are coming out at decent resolution, 1080p on new games, and if I want to run older games at 4K or whatever, that's about all I really need. And if it's more affordable, cheap, and just draws a lot less power than, you know, a GPU, CPU separated like I have now, that'd be great. That saves me money in the long run, and hopefully in the future we start getting combinations like that at lower prices, and that might really be the way to go, because we're seeing the mainstream GPUs starting to hit $350, and it's just too much. It's not worth it. You can't convince me that any game now is worth that much money, and I'm talking $350. You know, at $1,200, you're just out to lunch. I mean, $1,300 is just way too damn much money to be wasting on what's coming out. There's just nothing there. But that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Please share with friends. That really helps me out. That's all I have for today, and I will catch you guys in the next video.